so kindly, people of YouTube, punk rock fairy princess here. So, as I am prone to do, I decided to learn a shit ton about a very specific Harry Potter thing. This time it was Squibs, because I was like, that's kind of a messed up situation, you know, the treatment of the Squibs throughout the series and the wizarding world. Hoo boy, I had no idea. A squib, in case you weren't sure, is a non-magical person born to at least one magical parent. They're quite rare, occurring less often than like wizards and witches or muggleborns. So the magical ability from squibs isn't like gone, it's just dormant because we know that muggleborns are descended from squibs who married muggles. So the magical ability kind of resurfaces after a couple generations or whatever. It's possible for one sibling to be a squib while the others are not. Actually, that's usually what happens. This indicates that it's kind of a lottery whether or not the kid gets magical abilities. Even twins aren't necessarily the same because we know that Martha and Ryanach, I don't know how to say that name. I'm gonna go with Ryanach. The daughter of Isolde Sayer, the founder of Ilvermorny, were twins, and Martha was a squib while Ryanach was a talented witch. If you want to go more in depth into the why are some people muggleborns and some people squibs and etc., there are a lot of theories based on the genetics of how that all works. I only took grade 9 science, so I don't know shit about that. So we're just gonna move on from that. Yep. But squibs aren't entirely devoid of magic. Like, they can't, like, do magic, but they do have some magic-like characteristics, I guess you could say. They can form wizarding-like relationships with cats, in the case of Mr. Filch, or with cats that are crossbred with Kneazles, as in the case of Mrs. Fig. This likely means that squibs can form wizarding-like relationships with probably other magical or non-magical creatures. The Harry Potter lexicon posits that cats may be a wizarding equivalent of guide dogs and other animals that are trained to help muggles with disabilities. This comparison between being a squib and having a disability is quite apt and shows, as I'm going to prove later in this video, that the wizarding community, at least in the UK, is super ableist, which is fun. But before we get there, let's discuss some notable squibs, and by notable squibs, I mean pretty much every single squib that has been mentioned in both the series and the additional material released, because there aren't a lot of them. As I mentioned earlier, one of Isolde Sayer's twin daughters, Martha Sayer, was a squib. She's also the earliest squib that we know of. She was born around 1634 at Ilvermorny in Massachusetts. She considered her upbringing at Ilvermorny to be painful, which is understandable because her parents founded a school to learn for kids to learn magic, and she cannot do magic. That would suck. She went on to marry and just live as a nomad. Then we have the Thurkel brothers, who were also from the 17th century. Thaddeus Thurkel had 7 sons, all of which were squibs, which is extremely rare. He was so displeased with this that he decided to turn all his children into hedgehogs. And that's all we know. This dude turned his kids into hedgehogs because he didn't like that they were squibs. Yep. It's very indicative of the rest of all this information I'm going to tell you guys. Oh boy. Okay. Then there's Angus Buchanan, who is possibly the most well-known squib. Then there's Angus Buchanan, who was the first squib to really bring the struggles of squibs to the public eye, and was also the first squib who was in the public eye, like, you know, out and open about him being a squib. He was born in 1847 to pure-blood parents. His father was very prejudiced towards squibs. Shocker. And so his siblings helped him forge a Hogwarts acceptance letter. No, maybe because he didn't want to be turned into a small mammal. He went to Hogwarts the back of his brother's broom, and tried to get sorted. Unfortunately, the sorting hat figured him out, because it's a magical object, and said that he was a good-hearted chap but no wizard, which is a very nice thing to say. At least he didn't insult him, you know. So Angus returned home. His father, who had already had several owls about the whole situation, refused to let him in, told him to leave, and fired several curses at him as he left. So Angus was 11 years old and kicked out of the house. Wow. So he walked and hitchhiked his way to Edinburgh, lied about his age, and was taken in by a Muggle foreman and his wife who had never had kids. Eventually, he became a famous rugby player in the Muggle world, and that's how rugby became popular in the wizarding world, because they're like, cool. It was kind of more of a, holy shit, these Muggles are just beating the shit out of each other, and they don't even have, like, Skelegrow and shit. Wow, that's impressive. So kind of saw just as like an uncivilized version of Quidditch. In 1900, so of course during this whole time he's living in the Muggle world. But in 1900 he published his autobiography, My Life as a Squib, which was very successful and brought the plight of squibs to the wizarding world as it never had been before. However, as cool as this is, I personally don't think it did a whole lot to improve the treatment of squibs, because this is in 1900, and in the 100 years that, goes up to the Harry Potter series, I don't think a shit ton changed, but we're getting there. Marius Black, born between 1915 and 1920, was a third child of Cygnus Black II and Violetta Bulstrode. He was disowned when he was found out to be a squib and removed from the Black family tree tapestry, which is not a shocker because the Blacks are notoriously pureblood family. So finally, there's the squibs that we know about from the series itself. There's Mr. Arcus Filch, who is the grumpy, cruel Hogwarts caretaker, who's probably so grumpy because being a squib in the wizarding world is very shitty. Then there's Mrs. Fig, who lives in the Muggle world but has contact with the wizarding world because she breeds cats and Kneazles. Kneazles? I'm gonna call them Kneazles because Kneazles sounds weird. And is a member of the Order of the Phoenix. So we know about the attitudes towards squibs was bad in the past, but I'm sure they're better now, right? Closer to the present day, that is Harry Potter series. Yeah. Well, we know that squib is used as an insult in the Harry Potter series. Hagrid calls Filch a sneakin' squib in The Half-Blood Prince, even though Hagrid himself is mocked because of his giant heritage. Fun. In Cursed Child, I know it's not considered canon by most of the fandom, including me. Don't murder me. But even though I don't consider it totally canon, I'm going to keep with J.K. Rowling's world building in it because I do consider that to be canon. Yep. Don't kill me. Okay. In Cursed Child, Albus Potter, who sometimes has trouble with magic, is called a squib by a fellow classmate. Yep. And Cursed Child is basically present day. Wizarding families also fear that their children will become squibs, or are squibs. You can't become a squib. As we know with Neville, because he was a late bloomer, his family was afraid that he was a squib. This did not help with Neville's self-esteem. Shocker. As he calls himself almost a squib in Chamber of Secrets, even though he was a pureblood. Here is the strongest evidence, and by strongest evidence, I mean the most depressing thing about the wizarding world in the UK and its government. The Ministry of Magic does not register squibs. Let that just sink in for a second. The Ministry of Magic, the government of the wizarding world in the UK, has no record of squibs. They have records of everybody else, including, I'm assuming, Muggleborns. Right? Yeah. And no squibs. So they're literally second-class citizens in the wizarding world, which is depressing as fuck. Holy shit. Okay, anyway. So, in 1968/1969, there were Squib Rights marches, kind of the wizarding world equivalent of the civil rights movement, except in the UK. I don't know when the civil rights movement was in the UK. Anyway, probably around the same time, right? Anyway, demanding better treatment of squibs. Maybe recognition of their existence by the government. Maybe, possibly. Anyway, these marches attracted the attention of some extremist purebloods, precursors to the Death Eaters, probably, who turned the marches into a riot. So, there's no more information about these marches, so I'm assuming that nothing really changed, which, if you look at the Harry Potter series and how squibs are, the attitudes towards squibs in the Harry Potter series, not a shocker. So what was the point of this video? Other than to depress you with the facts of what I'm gonna call magical ableism in the wizarding world. I don't know. But obviously this isn't, real. I don't know why I'm so mad about it. Maybe because there are parallels in the real world to this. Anyway, so whether or not J.K. Rowling intended it, she made the wizarding world even more realistic with the treatment of squibs throughout history. So I guess props to J.K. Rowling for world building. Full disclosure though, I know all this stuff because I'm writing a fanfiction about squibs. Just being very honest here. But anyway, I kind of want to do more videos like this, essay style things on Harry Potter, because apparently I miss essays because I'm done exams now. Yay. Okay. thank you for watching. There was no real conclusion to this. If it was like a real world thing, I would have like, these are solutions that we could have, but like, it's fictional. It's in a book. So, yeah. So, thank you for watching. I'll see y'all later. Bye!